Hi guys, Ramon Goose here. In this video we're going to be looking at the effects as used by the Beatles. On July the 1st, 1963, in Studio 2 at Abbey Road, the Beatles undertook a recording session for the single She Loves You with a B-side I'll Get You. In this photo here we can see a Maestro fuzz tone. Lennon and Harrison had both bought the fuzz tone fuzz pedal from Selmer's Music Store in Charing Cross Road, London. These pedals were manufactured and distributed by Gibson, and the pedal was designed by Nashville studio engineer Glenn Snoddy. And although this pedal was actually made famous by Keith Richards on the song Satisfaction in 1965, however you can hear that on both of these songs, She Loves You and I'll Get You, there was no use of the fuzz effect, so it's obvious that Harrison and Lennon couldn't get this pedal to work for those two songs. Later that year, on September the 11th and 12th, the Beatles entered Abbey Road Studio 2 again to continue work on their second album with the Beatles. For the song Don't Bother Me, Lennon tried again to use the Maestro fuzz pedal. Whilst it was used on early takes, it didn't end up on the final cut. Although John really liked the sound of the fuzz, George Martin wasn't too happy and complained about the amplifier distorting too much. The final version of Don't Bother Me featured the tremolo effect which was built into the amplifier. For the Beatles, this was the first time the guitar effects made it to the record. Let's fast forward to October the 12th, 1965, when the Beatles were recording the album Rubber Soul at Abbey Road. Towards the end of the sessions in November, the Beatles recorded the Harrison original Think For Yourself. This song features two separate bass guitar parts. One was a standard bass part and one was played through a fuzz box. Both were performed by Paul McCartney. This was the first time that bass guitar had been recorded using a fuzz box device, as opposed to just manipulating studio equipment to achieve the same sound. The pedal used to create this fuzz was a tone bender pedal. It was designed by Vox employee Gary Hurst, who ran Vox's central London repair centre. Before Vox put their own name on the tone bender pedal, Gary Hurst released a few of his own versions, and he said he gave these original versions to the Beatles. However, Dick Denny of Vox also states the tone bender used in these sessions was in fact a Vox branded tone bender pedal. Another account from Ken Townsend, who was a technical engineer at Abbey Road. Whilst recording the song Think For Yourself, he states, PT was an electronic device in which you could have controlled distortion. You actually made the sound overload. And it's been stated that the technical people at Abbey Road built fuzz boxes for use with guitars. So while Ken Townsend credits the distortion on Harris's song to an in-house innovation devised by the sound technicians at EMI, it was actually an effects box known as the Tone Bender, built by Gary Hurst, who'd given a prototype to the Beatles earlier in 1965. In this photo here we can see Paul McCartney using a Mark I Tone Bender during a rehearsal in 1965. In April 1966, McCartney is pictured with a tone bender sitting on top of his basement amp. This is likely a 2-transistor Mark 1.5 tone bender. Gary Hurst, its maker, claimed in 2010 that he gave the Beatles a 2-transistor tone bender, and Vox engineer Dick Denny also claims he gave the Beatles a prototype Vox tone bender. During April 1966, John Lennon can be seen pictured using a Wem Rush Pepbox fuzz pedal. This was first made in 1966 and issued by Charlie Watkins' Wem factory from South West London. The tone bender fuzz pedal was once again used, this time on Harrison's Love You Too song from the Revolver album. You can hear this fuzz effect on the ending of the track on the guitar parts. At these very same sessions, on April the 13th, the Beatles recorded the track Paperback Writer. And it's worth talking about the electric guitar tone on that track because it's really, really cool. It was actually Paul McCartney that played that guitar riff, and Paul used an Epiphone Casino. And most likely this was played through a 7120 Vox amplifier with a 4x12 speaker cabinet. This was mic'd up by a Neumann U47 mic, and it went through a Fairchild 660 compressor. So guys, one way that the Abbey Road engineers would produce the distortion overdrive effect would be to use the TG12321 unit and then feed that directly into the REDD console preamps or the TG1234 console preamp. And that's how you would get that sort of saturation effect. Okay, let's talk about the reverse tape effect on the guitar solo of I'm Only Sleeping. So on this tune that John Lennon wrote from Revolver in 1966, George Harrison apparently spent 5 hours constructing his own guitar part, and by having the Abbey Road engineers run the tape backwards as he composed a solo that would ultimately, when reversed, fit the dreamlike mood. The guitar was double-tracked, once with fuzz and then once without fuzz. So just have a think for a minute how complicated that would have been back in the day. Obviously now with digital audio workstations, it's going to be a lot faster and a lot easier to accomplish that kind of feat. Legend has it that John Lennon came up with a term for another guitar effect, the flanger. As the Beatles recorded at Abbey Road, one of Martin's engineers, Ken Townsend, had discovered automatic double tracking using a second analog tape machine to create a delayed version of the original vocal and then feeding it back into the mix. By varying the delay, a whooshing type sound could be produced. Unsure of how to explain this effect to the non-technical Lennon, Martin offered the explanation that you take the original image and split it through a double vibrated sploshing flange with double negative feedback. And from that moment on, Lennon would call it Ken's flanger. Whether or not this is true, guys, I'm not sure. But yeah, let me know in your comments about this. On February the 8th, 1968, the Beatles recorded Across the Universe in Studio 2 at Abbey Road. Lennon used a Vox wah-wah pedal on his guitar for the overdubs. The Thomas Organ Company had developed the wah effect, and the Vox wah-wah was released in June 1967. And the Vox V846 wah-wah was fitted in the same case that was used for the Continental organ's volume control. At the time, the wah-wah cost £16 and 10 shillings. Okay, let's talk about the guitar tone for the song Revolution. On July the 9th, 1968, John Lennon had recorded an initial version which was slightly slower. On the 10th of July, he recorded a more livelier version. And it's a really stand-out sort of fuzzy tone that John Lennon gets. I'm now going to quote from Abbey Road engineer Ken Scott. And there was John, Paul and George all in the control room, all plugged in, just playing straight through the board. All of the guitar distortion was gotten just by overloading the mic amps in the desk. Another engineer who was at that session, Jeff Emmerich, states, "The guitar fuzz effects for Revolution was done at the mixing board. You had a full spectrum of frequencies distorted. That's why the Revolution guitars sound the way they do." Technical engineer Brian Gibson with his account of the session, and he stated that the guitars on Revolution came mostly by overdriving the guitar amps. On January the 2nd, 1969, the Beatles were rehearsing at Twickenham Film Studios, which would be released the following year as the film Let It Be. In various photos, Harrison can be seen with a Vox wah-wah pedal and a silver-coloured Arbiter fuzz face. The fuzz face was designed by Arthur Arbiter. In 1969, George Harrison received a present from Eric Clapton. It was a Leslie speaker cabinet, model number 147RV. This speaker cabinet also featured reverb. To connect his guitar, Harrison had to plug into a Leslie combo preamp and then into the speaker cabinet. You can hear the Leslie effect on Harrison's guitar on his song Old Brown Shoe. On the 30th of April, Harrison added a Leslie-toned guitar solo to take 27 of the Let It Be song. And like most of the material that was recorded, it was left to accumulate. However, in the beginning of 1970, it was given a second, more organised solo with the fuzz tone effect. Okay guys, that's it for this short video, and I hope you can provide some more information in the comments if you know anything else about the kind of effects that the Beatles used. In my opinion, they didn't really use that many effects, and a lot of the overdrive and distortion effects were used by hooking up two preamps together and overdriving one of them. Another thing to remember is the Beatles did play very loud sometimes in the studios. Remember, this is a band that was playing sort of full tilt in Hamburg. Even though they had small amps, there was a lot of energy in those early performances. So the Beatles obviously liked to turn up, and they had some loud amps, and they were used to playing loud. So I think that accounted for a lot of their guitar tones. Don't forget to subscribe, because in the future we're going to be taking apart specific guitar tones, like, for example, the great tone on the Taxman song. So stay tuned, guys. There's lots more Beatles stuff coming your way. And like I said, don't forget to subscribe, like and share. Ramon Goose signing out.